When you first learn about arithmetic operations, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, you only work with positive numbers and everything's fine, everything's positive all the time. Until about 5th or 6th grade when somebody says, hey, guess what? There's this other thing called negative numbers. And then we have to keep track of what's going to happen with those signed numbers. So in particular with addition and subtraction here. Couple different cases. The first one is both the numbers have the same sign. When that happens, we're going to keep the sign. Maybe we'll spell it right. And add the values. So for example, if I want to add 3 plus 5, well, those are both positive, so that it's going to stay positive. I'm going to add the values. 3 plus 5 is 8. Still positive, I get positive 8. No problem. If I want to add negative 5 plus negative 7, those are both negative values. So I'm going to keep the sign, which means my answer is going to be negative, and I'm going to add the values. 5 plus 7 is 12. The other choice is they're not the same sign. One's positive and one's negative. When that happens, I'm going to subtract the values, and you can think of subtracting the big one minus the little one, and I'm going to keep the sign of the number that's farther away from 0. So the one that's farther away from 0, the one with the larger absolute value. If you're teaching little kids, maybe you don't want to necessarily say it that way, but we want to keep the sign of the big one. For example, if I want to add 8 plus negative 3, well, 8 is positive, negative 3 is negative, so I'm going to subtract the values. 8 minus 3 is 5, and I'm going to keep the sign of the one that's farther away from 0. That's 8. 8 is positive, so my result will be positive, positive 5. Suppose I have 7 plus negative 10. One's positive, one's negative, so I'm going to subtract the values. 10 minus 7 is 3. Negative 10 is farther away from 0 than negative 7. So I'm going to have the sign of that one, which is negative. The difference between those numbers is 3, so negative 3. Subtraction is adding the opposite. So subtraction is really just addition in disguise. It's addition with one more step at the beginning, and that step at the beginning is whatever subtraction problem I have, I'm going to rewrite it as addition, and then I can do one of those two things that we just put up there. So if I have negative 7 minus 4, the first thing I'm going to do is rewrite that as addition. I'm going to keep the first one the same, negative 7, and instead of subtracting 4, I'm going to add negative 4, add the opposite. Well, now I'm adding two numbers whose signs are both negative. That puts us right back up here. The signs are both negative. I'm going to keep the negative sign and add the values. 7 plus 4 is 11, and it'll be negative. Suppose I want to subtract 5 minus negative 8. First thing I'm going to do is rewrite that as adding the opposite. So 5 gets to stay the same. Instead of subtracting, I'm going to add, and I'm going to make negative 8 into its opposite, which is positive 8. Well, now I have two numbers with the same sign. That puts us back up here. They're both positive, so I'm going to add their values, keep the sign. Positive 5 plus positive 8 is positive 13. Let's look at one more. If I want to do negative 7 minus negative 6. First thing I'm going to do, change it into addition. Negative 7 plus the opposite of negative 6 is positive 6. And now I'm adding two numbers with different signs. Well, that looks a whole lot like this example up here. I'm going to subtract the value. 7 minus 6 is 1. I'm going to keep the sign of the one that's farther away from 0, which is negative 7. That's negative. So the sign, the negative sign wins the positive or negative battle. And the difference between those two values is 1, so negative 1.